And welcome back to Finding Your Voice Live and Unleashed. It's Kenya. It's good to see you. Those of you who've been tuning in each week on these Tuesdays, thank you. If you're new here, welcome. If you're watching in the future, thank you for dropping by here. And make sure you subscribe. Okay. And make sure you hit the bell. That's how you know I'm going live, all the things. A little bit who I am. But before I say who I am, the topic tonight, this is a deep one for me. This is a deep one for me because this has definitely been something a bit part of my healing work. And that is how feeling too much almost broke me. And how, my whole point of doing these lives on Tuesday nights is really to be a little bit more vulnerable, to tell more of my story, to be a little bit more unleashed, to go behind the scenes. Because I think that some of my story has been kind of bits and pieces. I don't feel like it's fully, I don't know, shown all of its elements. And this is an area that I just recognize so that I need to do. So it's good to have you here. And so, how my feelings almost broke me. If you're here, put something in the comments, say hello so that I know you're there. If you're watching in the future, you can still comment. You can still put things in the comments. So I would love to, see you if you do that. I got to move some. I got all this stuff on my screen. So today I had to keep notes because this topic is very dear to my heart. This is like I said, a very big part of, to me, not only the personal work, but really the motivator and driver for any kind of work that I do around healing, whether that's my retreats, whether that's music, whether that's speaking, teaching. All of this is really coming from this topic. And so the way that I want this to roll tonight, it's going to be in parts. And I'm going to kind of go from childhood up to now. Now, I promise, I know I'm 52. That's a lot of years. I'm not going to be here that long. But as I was thinking through it and I was thinking about this light feels really bright. I was thinking about how I wanted to have my conversation around this whole topic of feeling too much and how it can be a superpower and one of the biggest problems and burdens of life. And that's being an empath. And so if you feel like you are an empath and you know what that word means and you put it in the chat or something. I can't always see all the chats. So if you're commenting and I don't see it, I don't acknowledge it, that's just because I can't see all of them from where I'm doing it. But if you feel like that is you, that you are that empath, put it in the chat. What is an empath? Let me just give a working definition, and then I'm going to say a little bit more just for those of you who are new to my channel and don't have any idea what it is I do. I want to share that. But a working empath for tonight. This is when you can feel other people's feelings, other people's energies, other people's emotions without them speaking. You can read rooms. You can be talking to somebody and they'll say something and you can feel, that's not what's going on. You have that superpower, right? So let me say who I am again for those who are new in the space or those who maybe know me but only know me as one thing and not another. Again, my name is Kenya. My full name is Kenya McGuire Riley. You may see McGuire Johnson. That was my former name, but my new name now being married is Kenya McGuire Riley. I am a creative. I am a healer. I'm a mom. I'm an educator. But more professionally, I have Finding Your Voice is my holistic wellness company. It's a boutique company. And the whole point of what I do with Finding Your Voice is to help women remember themselves, help women reclaim themselves and their lives, particularly those, when I first started my business, I was focusing on women, diverse women of color over 40, but we have expanded. I would say the majority of women still, yes, are at that 40 plus, but I absolutely have women younger than that I work with and that I do transformative work within coaching and astrology, day retreats, virtual retreats. But my big retreats have really been, my international ones have been reserved in the past for Black women over 40. And so again, the whole point is just to reclaim yourself. And this topic tonight is really the heartbeat for me of why I do what I do, because of how hard I've had to work on this for myself. And I see this so much in other women. Um, Women, naturally, we are wired to be the nurturers. And so our ability to read and intuit and feel others is a part of our wiring. This is why, as mothers, we can feel when our children, you need to feel that the moment you have a baby, you start sensing what that child needs, because the baby ain't talking to you for a few years. And when they start talking, you still ain't gonna understand them. So this is a part of our wiring. And what can happen is, while that's a superpower, it can also be a burden. And so I'm going to share my story. And I'm just hoping that tonight, whatever resonates for you, if this feels connected, let me know. Stay connected with me. I'm going to talk more. I don't have a sales pitch. I don't have some big old offer, but I will say this: stay connected, because this is the work that I do in our retreats. And you see the little scroll, if you go to that link tree, you'll find so much about me. But tonight I want to be more intimate and talk about my story of this issue of feeling too much, and how being a feeler has been something that I cherish. And it's also been something that literally, I don't know, almost broke me, but I think it did break me. But I also, from that broken or that breaking point, I alchemized it. And so the way I'm gonna do this tonight, I have notes. I have to read them because I really wanted to make sure that I talk about things in a way that, one, is authentic to me. Um, and I don't want to miss certain really important parts, but I also want to ask you questions as I go along. So if you're here in live time and you are able to chat, feel free to ask questions or respond to the questions when I get to those. If you're watching in the future, that's fine. You can still put your questions in the comments or just respond, put your answers once I get there. Okay. So, this whole idea, I just did a podcast episode. I have a podcast called the She Podcast, and it is only for our free and paid Patreon members. So if you decide you want to hear this, every Sunday I release She Podcast, and it's only 10 minutes. It's just every episode is 10 minutes, and it's usually me just trying to give you a nugget to really think about for the week. But I try to talk about topics that I know as women we are working through, and give you something to reflect on. Okay. So the topic for this past Sunday, and if you want to join that, it's totally free to hear these podcasts. I just don't make it available on Spotify or these main spaces. It's curated in our private Patreon community. So again, if you go to what's scrolling, you can find it. You can subscribe for free. You can listen. It comes out every Sunday. And also, if you are part of my newsletter, I send it out that way for you to join for free. But at any rate, what I wanted to do is, as I kind of talk about this and go through all the seasons, I was talking about the problem and power of being an empath. And that's what that episode is about. And as I start thinking more deeply about it, I'm like, wow, this is even deeper than I thought it was going to be. So when I wrote my notes, I was like, am I going to share all this? I am. And I'm doing it for you to reflect. So as I'm talking, I want you, what resonates for you, have your own notebook, take your own notebook or notes. If you don't feel like doing all that, that's fine. Just replay it. But I want you to see if you see yourself in any of this. Okay. Or if you don't, if it's a complete, I call it window experience, where this is all new, you've never had these experiences, I hope this helps you have even more compassion for people who are empaths and people who feel a lot, and not judge them, not make them feel too whatever, too much, too sensitive, because it's a really real thing. It's a super real thing. So, this whole problem and power of being an empath, it really kind of started for me in my childhood. I would say that phase of life, part one of this childhood, is the sensitive girl. Okay. And this is not to put my family or anybody on spot. When I was thinking through this, it's interesting. I have one sister. I was raised with one sister, and then my mom and dad. And my sister's 8 years older than me, and so we were almost raised a little. We're very close, but because of that age difference, you're kind of raised as single children to a certain degree because we were only in the house together for a certain amount of time. And I don't remember, obviously, when I was really, really little. And so by the time I was really, remembering, 7, 8, 9, 10, she was getting ready to leave, go to college, all that stuff. But I remember my household, my parents, my sister, and then eventually even my niece, my sister's daughter, all of their birthdays are in the summer. All of them. My sister and my mom and my niece all have June birthdays. Gemini and Cancer. My niece is a Cancer, mom and sister Gemini. And then my dad was a Leo, and his birthday was in August. And then my parents' wedding anniversary was in June. And so everything was summer. And here's little baby Kenya. And my birthday was in November. And I remember as a kid thinking, why is my birthday in November? I'm the only, it's in the fall, it's cold. Sometimes it snows, because I'm from Colorado. It snowed a lot of times on my birthday. And theirs was all sunny. And so I only say that because just that made me feel different. Now, on top of that, because yes, I am a fall baby and I am a Scorpio, and next Tuesday is my birthday, 11/11. I won't be doing a live that night. But because I celebrate my birthday. But I may do a video ahead of time and then post it. But so I already felt a little different. So on top of that, I was sensitive, and I would say my gifts in my childhood of having this sensitivity, I was deeply aware of how others felt and what others were experiencing. And so I would say I kind of had that old soul energy, and when you're a kid, it's like, oh, can you, little old soul, or can you, little whatever. And it was cute per se, but I could feel everything. And my emotional, I guess, intelligence, if you want to use that word, I didn't know that, of course, at that age, but it was pretty high. Okay. I could tell when, things that weren't being said, what was kind of going on. And so that happened everywhere I went. And so as a child, that's hard. And most children do that. Most children feel deeply because if you really get deep into all of this, just spiritually, soulfully, children are newer into this whole human space and this density and having this body and so forth. So they're way closer to God and divinity and that. And so we automatically as children feel. But there are some children who feel even deeper, who feel even maybe more than the average child. Okay. And that depends on a lot of factors. And I definitely was one of these little kids. Okay. And so what kind of almost broke me in that childhood phase of being able to feel so early was I was absorbing a lot of adult emotions too early. So if there's arguing in the house or anything like that, I was absorbing all of that, right? And then I was having to navigate that with a child mind. That don't work. Okay? Because in that child mind, you feel like one, it's your responsibility to do something because you're feeling it so intensely. And so instead of just sitting there, you feel like, okay, how can I be more responsible? And so this becomes really confusing because really what should be happening is that I'm just understanding that is my intuition and not my responsibility. And so those of you who have children who feel really deeply, please, please, please watch how you communicate with them. Watch how they what environments and what boundaries you're creating, because children automatically assume it's because of something that they did, right? And so then they will carry that responsibility. And this is when you hear this idea of parentified. Some parents maybe intentionally, kind of give more responsibility to the kids, and some not intentionally, but it ends up happening that way because if a kid is highly intuitive and highly empathic, they're going to feel like they have some level of responsibility, and it can be very, very confusing. And then what happens is they become too attuned to the adults. They become too attuned to what's happening in the house and not attuned enough to themselves. And so that's what happened to me. Okay. So that was the childhood part. Okay. Is that I was more feeling like I had to be more responsible for my mother's emotions or what's going on with, my parents or any of that, and really just completely disassociating, honestly, from who I was. But that's just because I needed to survive. So that was basically then the whole broken part of this is carrying emotions that weren't mine. And that's what can happen when you are an empath, for sure. You begin carrying other people's emotions, and that becomes extremely problematic. Extremely. So I have a question for y'all. My question, you can respond to this in the chat, or you can just simply reflect on it on yourself, especially those of you who feel like you are feelers and you feel other people's energies pretty quick and you kind of ascribe to the label of empath. This question I have is, when did you first realize you could feel things really deeply, deeper than most people? When did you ever realize that? Some people don't really realize that until they become adults, because they didn't have the language or didn't have the community or people to kind of teach them that. But think about, reflect, and you can put this in the chat, or you can just think about it in your head. If I don't want to put nobody on the spot, I understand. But just think about, when did you first realize you could feel really deeply and, deeper than most people? And that's just kind of a food for thought, because it probably started in childhood and you may not have known what to do with it. And all of those of you who are the people pleasers, or you realize you have these relationships where, you put yourself second a lot of times, that's not because you have, just poor self-esteem, the things that we kind of try to say it is. Usually it's because we are empathic, we feel very intensely, and to keep the peace, to keep the calm, we will step back. And that's exactly what I did. So this brings me to the second phase of life, which was my young adulthood. And so how my feelings were too much and nearly broke me then. Let me talk about what was happening then. So this is young adulthood. I would say this is like late teens and 20s, particularly when I felt this. And so this is when I morphed. Now I'm leaving home and I'm like in college and young adult leaving college. And this is when I really truly began to really master the people pleasing. This is when I stepped and put on my cape for people pleasing. I was kind of doing that as a kid, but I really now, because, your young adulthood, when you're in your 20s and late teens and college and all that, this is all about your social life, right? This is, we're creating these social relationships, our friendships, if we're dating, even with work, there's a certain level of socialness that's going on. And so I didn't want to be the odd man out, right? I could feel and read. I could still do all of that with people. Although I will say, I think I started trying to push that away more so that I wouldn't feel the confusion and the burden of all of that. But what that changed into was people pleasing. So how that looked at that age in terms of friendships, this is where I'm suppressing my own needs to avoid conflict with the friendships and with the dating and with the relationships. And then I felt like, oh, well, let me just kind of be there for others. That's a good friend. Does that sound familiar to anybody? So this is when my 20s definitely was probably the most where I was just trying to get in just do what you're supposed to do, girl. And I think this is a huge theme for Gen X. Gen Xers, we're not as loud as millennials. We're not as out the box as Gen Z. We're not as old school as baby boomers, all that. So, but we're not trying to put all our business out there, and we are the great people pleasers. And those of you who follow astrology, there's a part of astrology that looks at generations. And so we are the generation of what's called Libra, where Pluto was in Libra. And all that means, again, I'm not going to go real deep in that, is we definitely, relationships was a thing. This is why Mary J. Blige and Faith Evans and, Usher, Tevin Campbell, all those songs about relationships, that was a lot of what we have come to navigate. And in that, a lot of people pleasing. So I definitely was that. And so that almost broke me for sure, because what was happening was I basically was losing myself in order to belong. And it wasn't like I felt, listen, my friends in my 20s and in college, I still very good friends with many of them. But I didn't have the maturity at that age to recognize that if these people really love you for who you are, then you don't need to lose who you are. If you have to show up as someone else or pretend the funk or fake the funk or whatever, then this probably is not going to be a relationship or a friendship that's going to be longstanding. But I didn't know that. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have ChatGPT. We didn't have all of this. None of this was going on to self-care. None of that was happening. So I definitely, what almost broke me was I really was losing myself in order to belong with whomever, with the man, with the friends, with the work people, with whatever. Who is Kenya? I don't even know. And I was starting to become aware of this. So I would journal about feeling like two people, feeling like there's this Kenya and then there's this Kenya. And this Kenya really wants to be an artist, and she wants to be free, and she wants to, sing, and she wants maybe to have her own business. I remember in my late 20s, like, could I have a business? Like all these things. But then it was like, oh, no, this is Kenya though. This is the Kenya. She went to college. She got her degree. She needs to get a job. She's got married. She needs to have 2.5 kids and a fence, all. So I remember journaling that, and that was because there was just kind of just lost thing. And so my question for you for this stage is, what is one way, and this can be in the past or now, that you have abandoned yourself to keep the peace? Again, you can put that in the chat or just reflect on it. Just take that question in, journal on it, or just put it in your mind. What is one way that you can name that you have abandoned yourself to keep the peace? Now, for some of us, these are major, like whole marriages, whole 30-year, 20-year relationships, whole careers. Because I don't want to hear my family. I don't want to hear my friends. I don't want to hear all that. So I will be the sacrificial lamb and keep the peace. It's that breaks us. And that was the trajectory I was on. That was the path that I was on, is just keep the peace so I could belong, so I could have the picture that was constantly being conditioned and programmed into me to have. So those who are empaths, meaning you can read, you can tell other people, you master people pleasing. You master it because they don't even have to tell you. They don't even have to tell you what it is. You just can feel it, fix it. They don't even have to say it. And this is the thing. I hear this all the time. I'll hear girlfriends, well, I'm the only one that got to do it. And, husband, he don't even know where that is in the car. So I just went ahead and I did this. Like, you're already fixing stuff, putting stuff in place, doing all the things. The kids you already finding out all the stuff because you can intuit it. But where are you? And that was me. That was me, full-fledged. All right, so that was phase 2. There's 4 parts. So part 3, this is when the true overwhelm came. this is when the feelings were just too much. So this would be in my 30s. Okay. This was once I had children. And see, having children for me, I'll speak in I statements, woke the hell out of me. Woke me up. Woke me up. Woke me up, girl. But the problem was, while it was pimp slapping me, with these babies, I was like just overwhelmed. Because remember, who was Kenya? I don't know. I had fed into this Frankenstein that I had created, right? This life and kinds of relationships and all the things I was forming, and that's not to say that these things are void. They were, obviously very important and they're part of my journey. But my connection to who I am truly, truly wasn't there. So what this does is create this just constant state of overwhelm. And so for me in my 30s, at this point, in my 30s, I had gotten my degree. By now, I had gotten my degree in physical therapy, was practicing. I had gotten my master's in counseling. I was, faculty at a university. I was mother. I was wife. I was leader and healer on crack. Like I was in some, so my ability to be an empath and to feel and to sense, to know and have that emotional intelligence to keep elevating myself, that was the gift, right? That was the gift. But this is the thing. My gifting of always desiring to support and build and guide and help others had nothing necessarily to do with what I needed to do for me. So I was people pleasing, but not pleasing me. So this is how the overwhelm starts. And so what almost broke me in this 30-something life, which I would consider my mid-adulthood, I'm now in emotional overload from my relationships, from work itself. I used to, and I'm not lying about this. This is the truth. I was working in my 30s after I had my second child. So I was probably around 35 because I was around 33, 34, I think, when he was born. After I had him and I went back to work, I started working. I was faculty at a community college, and the college was like over 1 hour commute one way, over 2 hours both ways. So in my commute, y'all remember Dr. Robin Smith? She used to come on Oprah's show, Black woman psychologist, amazing psychologist. And she would say the most profound things on Oprah's show. She was really, really good. And so she had her own, I don't know how I was listening to her. It was on something on the radio, but every day she hosted a show. And I would listen to her every morning and I cried every single morning. I had a period of time. It felt like months. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but every single day I cried driving into work because I was so miserable and with my life and with me, meaning, and the misery wasn't coming because my life was miserable, but it was because I felt so lost. There were so many things that were happening that I was feeling so overwhelmed about that I didn't want. There were so many things that I was finding myself on this rat race toward that I could do, but weren't in my heart to do. I wasn't being creative. I wasn't doing music. I wasn't doing all of those other special gifts that being an empath can do for you when you focus on yourself. And so I was highly irritable. I had lots of anxiety, very scattered, lots and lots of confusion internally, very drained. And I really had no energetic boundaries. And so what I mean by energetic boundaries, meaning you invite me to this. Okay, I'll go to that. You want this? Okay, I'll go do that. Not checking in with myself to say, okay, how is your energy right now? Do you feel like doing that? Didn't even know what that meant. Okay. And granted, at this time, this is now in the, the 2000s, early 2000s, we weren't having language like this to really talk about this. But remember, I also had a master's degree in counseling. So I definitely knew a lot about behavior and mental health, but I wasn't utilizing that for myself fully. And so that was my overwhelm. And so I absolutely, I feel like, and I've mentioned this in past videos, that's what broke me. High levels of self abandonment, high levels of abandoning who I understood myself to be. And so that kind of big theme at that time was overfeeling, overgiving, underbeing. Overfeeling, overgiving, overdoing, underbeing. And so my question for you, now that we're at this phase, is where do you struggle most? Is it boundaries with others or boundaries with yourself? Again, if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, feel free to do so. But I know this is personal, so this is fine. Just think inside, reflect inside. Where do boundaries get tricky? Is it both? But if you had to say where you struggle most, where is it with your boundaries? And it's really important. What I have learned in my journey, and this is what's going to bring me to this next phase, which is a happier phase, is I had to really learn about boundaries. I started reading a book that is called Boundaries. And again, this is back in the day where there wasn't a lot, at least wasn't being advertised a lot. I didn't know a lot about boundaries, but it was brought to my attention. I want to say that my former husband, I think he brought it to my attention. And so I started reading about boundaries and reading about what this even means. And it was a game changer. It was really, really a game changer because I finally felt like I was reading something that talked more about boundaries in the form of this is how you're going to actually be better. This is how you're actually going to have a healthier relationship with your family, with friends, with coworkers, is if you can start learning boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're not blockades. They're there to help you have actually healthier relationships. And so that really was a game changer. So the last part I want to talk about is being over 40 and now over 50. And that is what I'm calling my awakening. This was my awakening. This after broke down. And this is why we have to let things fall apart. I know many of you, many of us, we Velcro, tape, staple, button up, try to keep those pieces together. But if you can allow yourself to kind of just fall apart, that's when we can rebuild. And so that's really was my rebuild. And so really the awakening, the big turning point was that I realized the cost of not being myself. Like the cost was messing up my mental health. It was messing up my family. It was messing up my ability to focus. It was making me anxious. Like I said, I was crying all the time. So I think those of you who are empaths and feel a lot and you just kind of just suck it up and just do it, you have to start thinking about what is the cost of you not being yourself? What is happening to your health? What is happening to who you deeply are inside? What is the cost? And so I realized that cost for me was really high. And so I realized the big thing I had to do was to break the cycle of self-betrayal. And this is deep, y'all. I'm talking about this kind of in flow language because, I want to be done in 45 minutes or so, but this required therapy. This required spiritual coaching. This required retreats. This required family meetings. This required taking time off. This required quitting a career. This required a lot. And it was worth every single more so. Every single piece of it. Every single piece of it. And so I was just talking to my girlfriend about this, about picking your hard. And I tell my kids this constantly. Typically, it's, am I going to do this hard thing or this hard thing? It would be so much easier if it was like, should I do this hard thing or this easy thing, right? Or simple thing. You have to pick your heart, because anytime you are in a situation where you have self-abandoned, staying in that mode is going to be very, very hard. And there's really no light at the end of that. There's no rainbow. It's just hard. But learning how to not self-abandon and to create boundaries and start living on purpose and living in alignment with what you empathically know about yourself is very hard initially, but it has a whole pot of gold at the end. And so I always say, just whenever life is presenting hard, pick the hard that has the likelihood of a rainbow at the end, or a pot of gold or something, not the hard that just all you see is hard. You have a choice. And so some of the things, what I guess saved me and what I had to alchemize with these feelings, that, it's not like the empath went away like that. As we get older, that empath is even stronger. It's more tuned in. Okay. So it's not about doing away with. I don't want you to think that I need to stop being an empath or I need to not feel so much. And that's why you don't want to tell your children, if you can tell your children is highly sensitive, and that usually shows up by maybe, just more tears, maybe more crying, more quick to get frustrated, or quick to, just kind of say my feelings are hurt, or whatever. You have to be really, really careful with that. You have to be careful with how you talk to them, because they won't learn how to navigate their intuition. Okay. And then that can throw off their nervous system and your neurological regulation, all of that. So the things that saved me in this now over 40, these are the three main things that I did that really helped alchemize this empath in me, or this highly sensitive person that I am. And you can kind of see if this resonates for you or not. But the three things were self-discovery, discernment, and, like I just mentioned, boundaries. Those three things for me. And these are when I am coaching or I'm doing retreats with women that I can tell that they have self-abandoned. That's the direction that I know we need to go. We need to focus on first self-discovery. And that's honestly probably, that is the heartbeat of even how I teach. Even when I'm teaching students who want to become future nurses and doctors, which is what I teach, health science students. I'm always quickly, and the other faculty I work with, and I'm so blessed to work with a group of faculty who believe in this, is like, we have to do self-discovery. Like, we have to start thinking about who you are. That's critical. So for me, how did I do self-discovery? I didn't sit down one day and read a book about self-discovery. What I had to do for that actual self-discovery is I had to recognize this was going to be a spiritual journey. That this was going to be way more about me and God, way more about me learning about who I am on a spiritual and divine level, and not just who I am as Kenya, as a human. And I recognized that I had to go have a deeper relationship with God. That for me and my life, doing the things that I saw others do, in terms of whether it's, going to church, read the Bible, those were, yes, absolute tools. And Kenya, you're going to have to go deeper. You're going to need to have a more intimate relationship with God. And when I say intimate, meaning you're going to have to go ask the questions, ask the hard questions, explore the things that nobody else is talking about. You're going to have to get in some really uncomfortable spaces. And I realized this. And so that was a part of my self-discovery. And I did that through retreats, which is why I host retreats. I started, my first retreat was in 2009, and it changed my life. And It's what I aim for when I host my retreats in Bali, when I host a retreat in Costa Rica, when I host a retreat in Mexico. We have an upcoming retreat going to be happening in Ghana. I'll tell more about that. The point is ultimately to really recognize self-discovery and do the inner work and at least give people the motivation and the desire to do that, because that's hard work. I also, for my self-discovery, in addition to kind of journaling, I've always been a journaler. Like that journaling is something I've always done. But in addition to journaling, I realized I needed more. And I still am working on this. This is, this phase forward. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm at right now. Solitude. I'm really having to better understand solitude, because one of the things about being an empath, wherever you go, you are feeling. Grocery store, concert, laundress mat, whatever, you're feeling. And it's not like you are trying or it just is. And as you get older, and for myself, as I've gotten older and I now do so much more work around helping people reclaim their lives, I can feel it even stronger. So I have to be really careful where I'm at. And solitude is a huge part of my self-care, honestly. So if you don't see me at a lot of things, or why doesn't Kenya go to this, or why don't I see, or Kenya, you're always traveling. And it's like, understand, when I'm traveling, it's usually just me and Barry or my kids. And I've done solo trips too. And that's really because of energies. I'm very porous. And so when I say porous, meaning like pore, like you have pores in your skin, I'm very porous, meaning I absorb pretty easily. And what can happen, I will start taking on emotions. Not only can I read the emotions, but I will start experiencing the very same emotions that that person is having inside that they may not even be talking about. Some of you are like that, where not only can you read people, but you will take on their emotions. And so they don't feel good now, I don't feel good, right? Like, and you'll kind of think it's, oh, well, your mood is bad, it's making everybody's mood bad, it's just making a lot of that is empath. You literally start, that's like you can wear the energy. And I'm like that. And I have to be really careful, therefore, what fields I'm in. And so solitude has helped me a lot. And that's not living in solitude. No, I love my people. I love connection. I love relationship. And I recognize when I need to spend time by myself. And the pandemic really, really, really showed me how fruitful for me solitude is. And so, yes, I'm very much the introvert, very much. I can be around a lot of people and have a good time, but the way I'm going to get my energy is absolutely in that solitude. So those of you who are friends with me and you're like, don't be calling, again, that has nothing to do with, it's all love. I have to do this for my self-care as an empath. The other big part that I mentioned, the second thing, is discernment. And so emotional intelligence and energetic intelligence. So emotional intelligence is what you're intelligent about emotions. You can kind of, you understand, you can read and, cues and read how people's emotions, and you're considerate. That's all that emotional intelligence. But there's also energetic intelligence. And what that is being able to sense the energy of people. So maybe it's not so much of the emotions that they're having, but you can also sense if a person is on a higher frequency, or if they kind of reside in kind of that more of the glass is half empty frequency, kind of that more lower or stagnant energy. And so really learning how to discern when an energy is a buoyant and high versus not so much. And that's not to judge or criticize at all. It's to discern. Sometimes we just need to kiki and just sit back and just be, right? Sometimes we just have to have that. But for me, I recognize I need more of the curious higher energy kind of frequency. Otherwise I'll get kind of irritable. I've just noticed that. And I definitely will quickly get into a people please, because again, I still don't want a lot of conflict. You know what I mean? I still want people to like me. I still want that kind of stuff. So I just have to really watch energy fields and how and use my discernment to know, okay, this is an energy field that's safe, that's fine, or one that maybe not so much for me. Okay. And then choosing where to place my energy, basically, where am I going to go? Who am I going to hang out with? As we get older, over 50, it's just such a different phase of life. Perimenopause, all these things, none of this stuff is happening linearly, right? There's a lot happening all at once. But I am way, way more intentional, because I know that when I get in spaces, I'm going to feel things that other people may or may not feel. And this is a thing. And I don't think I've said this yet, but one of the biggest challenges of an empath, and I said this on the podcast episode that I did, you will feel something that another person isn't even aware that they are experiencing. Because we live 10% of our brain is our consciousness. The other 90% is subconscious, unconscious. We're not even clued in. And as an empath, you're tapping all into that 80, 90%. And so what starts happening is you start responding to that. And now the person is annoyed because, like, what are you even doing? Like, I never said that. I never this, that. You're like, well, you were feeling that. I know you were feeling that. And the person's like, no, I wasn't. When that happens, a lot of times, because literally the person doesn't know yet. You're so empathic, you're so intuitive that you're tapping into something that they are oblivious to. And here you are responding and fixing and stepping in and caring for something that they are oblivious to. That's how deep it can go. And that obviously can be very problematic, because now you're not really allowing people to have their own journeys. And this is super important. People have to have their own journeys, whether it's really messed up, whether you can see, oh my gosh, what are you doing? This is going to cause this problem. This is going to cause, you will know all of that, right? But your responsibility is not to manage other people. And as empaths, it will feel like we do need to manage it, because we want things just to be okay and peaceful and all right. And we don't want to get frustrated. We don't want to have all this conflict, right? So if I just do this, if I just say that, if I just pull here, then maybe I'll fix it. But then now you've completely abandoned your needs. You've completely abandoned, because you've spent so much energy trying to figure out how to manage this other energy that's not yours. So I have just learned for myself that I have to not do that. And I think particularly those of you who are parents of young adults, those who are either college age or in their early 20s, and even high schoolers, is really learning how to let your kids have their own experience, and not slyly or whatever, but start to learn the new relationship you have to have. That's its own special lie. Like, that's a whole nother topic. But that's a good place to practice it. It's a good place to practice it. And so I had to use a lot of discernment. And then, lastly, in this whole kind of what saved me from this kind of feeling too much is boundaries. By far. And it's something that I'm still really working on. I am a work in progress. Saying no without the guilt. Ooh. Like, I can say no, but I'm trying to think of, like, okay, I need to tell them this because I need to justify this. And because I want to, it's interesting. I have a group of girlfriends from graduate school who we used to do a girls trip every other year before the pandemic. And so we haven't done a really full big girls trip really since 2019. And so finally the group is like, we're going to do a cruise. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to do this or whatever. And I knew I got so much that I got to take care of financially, responsibly, all the things come 2026. But I'm going to just try. Well, I did the down payment or whatever, but then realized this is not going to work. This isn't going to work. So then I'm like, okay, how am I going to tell them this? How am I going to, what am I going to say? How am I going to, and I'm going through all these hoops. And I'm like, you know what? You're just going to say you're not able right now. You've got some other responsibilities. And I gave a little bit more detail than that. But learning how to do that and not feel guilty for whatever, but that's a really big part of not allowing yourself to get broken in your feelings, is learning how to say no, work through the hard feeling of that guilt when to show up and just know it's okay. They're still gonna love you. They're still gonna care about you, right? If they gonna leave just because of that, then they weren't not really your friends, right? That's what we would say to our kids or whatever. So that's a big part. Also in this boundary, learning, and this kind of is what I was saying, allowing discomfort instead of abandoning yourself. And I want to say this loud. Learning how to sit with discomfort instead of abandoning yourself. That's huge. Really, really important. And then the last part of boundaries is if we can start prioritizing where we feel safe emotionally. I talked about energies, and I realize it's important for me to prioritize where I'm going to feel safe energetically. And that's good for me. That's what's going to allow me to be in better relationship with this person or situation ultimately. So, I told y'all this was a deep one. This was deep, but this has been my process. And so this new identity that I am in process and in progress with is to still be that empath, because I love being an empath. I love being able to intuitively feel. It helps me connect more to my body. It helps me to connect more to my needs. It's not something, and obviously as a coach, as someone who hosts retreats, as someone who is guiding people through their transformations and their renewal and their reclamations, being an empath, that's a muscle that's really, really important. You want to be with those types of people who are mentors or coaches or whatever, who have that empath muscle. Super important. But I realize be this empath, but have a certain level of sovereignty and clarity, and more than anything, self-trust. Learning how to trust myself is a lot of where I'm at right now. That's a heavy part of where I'm at right now. And so, um, yeah, it's trust that what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm feeling is okay and means something. All right. And so this last question, just for you to reflect on, you can put in the chat or you can just journal on yourself, is if you could describe your emotional journey in one word right now, what would it be? And just allowing yourself to have whatever that is, just allowing yourself to feel that word. I'm not going to go back and fix it and judge it, but just where are you in this emotional journey? Okay. So I think the main thing that I just want to get across about how this whole feeling too much almost broke me is what really almost broke me, honestly, was just simply me not being me. Me not being me is what almost broke me. Me allowing my feelings to go so fast into people pleasing, so fast into stepping into other people's lives and trying to fix and whatever and abandoning myself. That's what almost broke me, not the feelings. Feelings are okay. Feelings are good. Feelings are the cues. They tell us what's going on with us. We don't want to not feel. We need to feel. That's super important. But what we have to recognize is if it's leading me to not being myself, that's the problem. And the thing that really is healing for me and that has saved me is really me simply returning to myself, simply returning to me. That's honestly the thing that has allowed me to keep moving through being an empath and being a feeler, is really, really understanding myself. And so if any of what I said tonight resonates, one, please like and share this video, because I would love for more people to hear this, because I think a lot of women, I know me sharing this story is not a unique story. It's unique in that it's my experience and all the details, right? But I think that a lot of us as women are dealing with this. You know, wanting to be in our feminine energy, wanting to be intuitive, but also knowing that that intuition can make us abandon ourselves because we will feel so much. We will people please, we will self-sacrifice, and we will literally leave ourselves. So if this resonated, like the video, share it, repost it, put a comment, anything. It would be really valuable. And I would also say if this really resonated for you and you feel like you're in your own season of kind of reclaiming yourself, um, keep coming back, stay connected with me. Because really, like I've been kind of saying all along, my work is really about helping women return to themselves. That's really ultimately my goal. It's not, I'm never in here trying to fix people. Retreats are not about that. They're about you remembering yourself and returning to the core, the beautiful divine core of who you are. And so, you know, I do all of that through my retreats. I do it through coaching. I do it through creating sacred community spaces. And I'm going to be sharing some really beautiful retreat experiences for 2026. And I'm super excited. They're going to be announced soon. And so these are going to be spaces designed for rest, spaces for clarity, for sisterhood, and for you really remembering who you are beneath all the noise. Okay. That's really my whole goal of all of it. And so if you're feeling called to some kind of deeper self-discovery and you're wanting support along that journey, stay tuned. Stay tuned. And join my email list. Keep walking with me. Let's keep doing this. If you see here at the bottom of the scroll, if you go to either findingyourvoiceafter40.com, you can sign up. You can see even for the retreats if you want to be alerted about that. But if any of this, more than any of that, if this resonated, let's just stay connected. Let's just keep talking. Let's keep exploring. So we can have community around these topics. That's the point of why I'm on here, really, to do all of this. Okay. And so if you really though know for sure you want to make sure because retreats are that's like my staple kind of thing that I do to really work on this inner work to help people, you can put retreat in the comment and I can follow up with you to kind of get you at least on. There's a forum that I have that anybody who is interested in learning about retreats or want to stay on any kind of alerts or announcements, that's on the website, findingyourvoiceafter40.com/retreats. That's a way to connect, or you can do this, this link tree that you see scrolling, or just put in the comments, again, just simply say retreat, and, we can stay connected that way. So that's kind of what I got for you. Feeling too much almost broke me. I kind of showed you in each phase. If you're just joining the live, please go, when this is done, go back and watch. And I broke down really from childhood to now how feeling too much almost broke me. And then I also talked about, ultimately what I've done to navigate and what I'm doing to navigate that. And this is the same process that I really use with my clients. We go through a self-discovery, then we kind of look at where our beliefs are and so forth and how to release them and reset. And then we visualize a different future, a different way of returning back to self. So that's it for tonight. I knew this was going to be a full hour. Next Tuesday, the 11th, 11/11. That's my birthday. I won't be here live, but I believe I still will maybe record a video to release at the 7 p.m. Central Time that I usually do my lives. And again, just let's stay connected. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, share all the things, comment, and reach out to me. And again, if this really resonated for you and you really feel like, it's time for you to sit down and start thinking about this a bit more deeply, and you're an empath and that you have self-abandoned yourself, I do free discovery calls, but I also do transformational consultations where you can actually leave with something in your hand. Okay? You guys have an amazing week. Thank you so much for listening to this, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.